Hello and welcome to the Elevate Cast. This is a podcast made by young people for young people. You can find us on all our socials, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and we hope you enjoy the show.
Welcome to our first episode of Elevate Cast today, and we have some very excited people to welcome into the room. So first off, I'll introduce myself, and my name is Laura.
Hi, my name's Sinead.
Hi, my name's Tara.
Hi, my name is Chaz.
Hello, my name's Megan.
Hi, my name's Axel.
Hi, my name's King.
Thanks, guys. You are very, very welcome today. So the idea of our podcast today is just to get us talking and sharing some of our thoughts and feelings. And we're kind of focusing on kind of coming out and looking at the LGBTQI community. So my first question as we go round is, when I say to you coming out, what is kind of like the first thing that you think of? Tara?
I think the first thing I would think of would probably be like vulnerability, because you don't really know what they're going to think of at the end of the day when you come out to them. So it is a very scary experience because you never know.
Thanks, Tara. Chaz?
The first word that comes to my mind, it would probably be like my mum. Just sort of because she was the first one who kind of accepted me as when I came out as bisexual.
Thanks so much, Chaz.
First thing I think is probably like pressure, I guess, because I feel like a lot of people feel like they have to come out and they have to tell like friends and stuff. But if you're not comfortable, you don't really have to, I suppose.
It's something to do in your own time.
Yeah, when you feel like fully comfortable and when you're sure, I guess.
Thanks, Axel.
When I think of coming out, I think of the word fear, because I think it's a very scary experience, because there's a lot of uncertainty there. You don't know who's going to support you, who's not, how people are going to treat you from then on, and how things are going to change. So it's a big time of change and a lot of fear with coming out.
I probably see it as two different ways. So kind of probably pre-coming out and years ago would have that, the fear, the guilt, the shame. And then I have, I suppose, the other side of it as well, is that feeling of empowerment and pride and, I suppose the sense of freedom, essentially, about allowing myself to be. And so I can understand in terms of young people right now and older LGBTQ plus people, that fear and guilt and shame is, still very prevalent. But I can also see the other side of it as well, the positive.
As you kind of spoke there about that element of support. So that kind of leads into the next thing that I just wanted to ask you guys and like what your thoughts are. What advice would you maybe give a young person that is considering, in their own time, as you were saying there, Axel, considering coming out? What kind of advice do you think you would offer to them?
I think I'd say the same thing Axel had said, like, you don't owe anyone coming out, just take your own time. But yeah.
I really like that, you don't owe anyone. That's great, Tara.
Thank you.
Well, the first thing that originally came to my mind was the thing that was said by Axel. Basically, just don't rush it. It's your choice. You can come out whenever you want. It's as long as you're comfortable with it.
Thank you. Megan, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think coming out, it's a very vulnerable process, like Tara said. There are so many different supports there to help people who maybe just aren't ready to take that big step.
Thanks.
I think just, as I said earlier, just don't feel pressured to, because, as everyone else is saying, it's a really like vulnerable time for yourself, and as Tara said, you don't really owe it to anyone. So just come out when you're ready, I suppose.
My answer is going to be a bit morbid, but to be honest, basically, a lot of people live in a lot of different situations at home, And I think the one piece of advice I'd give is make sure that it's safe for you to come out, that you're not of a risk of you're still going to have a home and you're still going to have somewhere to go to, because there's been a lot of stories of queer people coming out and being kicked out of their homes. So if you're considering coming out, make sure that it's safe enough for you to come out and that you're in a situation where you're able to.
Kinga, that's great advice.
I think first of all, for them to remember that they're not alone. They're not the only person. There is the LGBTQ plus community. There's so many supports that are there in place, and your feelings are very valid. You know, if you know it's fear or the guilt or the shame, they're very valid, and you own them. And as well, it's a journey. It's not that kind of, okay, I tell one person and that's it. I've came out, happy days. That's not, it's a process and it's a journey. And a lot of the time it's a journey with yourself and getting to that place of, yeah, I'm proud of who I am. It doesn't happen overnight. And I think as well, knowing that some people, you know who you are, okay? But the people that you tell, maybe they never had any idea that you are LGBTQ plus, and the response may be not what you expected, and to give them that time to process that. Yeah. They can come back and say, oh, my bad, I apologize, I'm sorry how I reacted, to give people time to process as well and being understanding around that.
Because as you said, you know who you are, but other people also know you as who you present to be. So if for a period of your life you've presented as in a certain way, and then obviously you yourself have that time to come to terms with who you are, then you're also giving other people that time
to do that. And as well, in terms of when people are coming out, it's important for them to remember the person that they tell. Does this person need to know? Will they tell anyone else? How might that person react? And will they be supportive in that? And am I happy with other people knowing right now? And do I feel safe sharing this? And safety is like a fundamental, it's really important.
Absolutely. What kind of support do you think is currently in place for young people that maybe might be in that situation of feeling unsafe?
So right now in Donegal Youth Service, we're very proud to be able to offer the Breakout project to anyone who'd like to avail of it. Breakout, for those of you who don't know, is the LGBTQ plus support here in DYS. We run on a Friday for those aged 18 to 24 from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock, and on a Saturday for those aged 12 to 17, again from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock. Obviously, like Kinga says, things aren't always all rainbows, pardon the pun. Sometimes things are very morbid, sometimes your family doesn't accept you. We're not going to be able to fix all of homophobia and transphobia overnight. What we can do in the meantime is offer young LGBTQ people a safe space where they can come along, have a chat, have support, have a community, have friendship, have a cup of tea, and just be yourself. Even if home just isn't quite ready for you to be yourself yet, you're always welcome to be yourself at Breakout.
Thanks, Megan. That's really, really helpful. And as well, linking in with that, there's a youth information centre as part of the Donegal Youth Service that's open up to anybody up to the age of 30. You can come on in, you can get some advice on kind of accommodation and benefits you can access, and just looking at that kind of support there as well. So that's great. It's good to have those kind of places in place, isn't it? Speaking of places, Donegal. Obviously, I'm not a native, okay? I'm quite new to Donegal. But I just want to ask you guys, on a personal level, what has your experience been like so far growing up in Donegal? And we're going to spin this way to start off. Yeah.
Okay, so mine, as Megan said, is not all sunshines and rainbows. Unfortunately, even from when I was a very young age, I've had to deal with homophobia all of my life. Even if people that I knew didn't know that I was queer, I still had to deal with knowing that they weren't going to accept me. That at the end of the day, when I'm older and I can come out, I can fully come out, they're not going to support me, and I could never see them again. So, and then what's even worse, I'm sorry, I'm being very negative today, but
okay.
I go to a Catholic school, which is not. It's not great. It's not great a place for queer people. Although everybody that I know in this school, they are like whenever they think when they're accepting of the idea of queer people. If they think, oh, two guys kissing, that's okay. But if they knew someone that was queer, it would be very bad. If someone were to come out in my year, it'd be full on war. It would be so bad for that person. So I've kind of had to deal with homophobia growing up, and also nobody really talks about the isolation of being queer growing up. I knew that I was queer from a very young age, so in friend groups, whenever girls were talking about boys, I just couldn't relate. And it was kind of isolating in a way because you couldn't relate to them, and it was hard to talk to them because you didn't really know what to talk about. And yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm really interested in what you say there about there's a difference between the idea of being an ally and the reality of being an ally. That's really interesting. We might look at that a bit more. Thanks. Axel, what are your thoughts?
Well, I went to when I was in primary school, I was surrounded by a lot of people whose parents were really religious and stuff. So I have queer family as well, and whenever I'd bring them up, I'd always get really negative reactions. And when I was younger, I guess it wasn't really told to me that I could be queer. So when I got older and finally did realize I was in secondary school and started going to Breakout and stuff, I realized how terrible homophobia was in Letterkenny specifically, but Donegal as a whole. I didn't really realize it until I was going into town on Fridays after school and just getting harassed by people. I'd have to avoid certain shops with my friend group because we'd be yelled at and stuff, I suppose. And I don't think I've ever really had to deal with it that badly separately, but when you're in a group, you're just that much more vulnerable. I remember just leaving leaving shops and stuff and getting finding out later that I was recorded and put on someone's a Snapchat and stuff. It was really isolating, but I think things like Breakout offer that bit of escape from it all. I think Breakout made me a lot more happy with myself to be queer, because I had really bad internalized homophobia, I think, from being in secondary school and being around people who weren't, I don't know, the most accepting, I guess, and then Breakout did help a lot with that, so it was good.
Could you maybe just explain to me a little bit more? You mentioned there internalized homophobia. Could you try and just expand on that a little bit, Axel?
It's more when you can, as yourself, support queer people and stuff, but the idea of you being gay or being queer is completely out of the picture for you, and it involves a lot of internalized hatred, or internalized you won't accept yourself. And I definitely had that issue from around 6th class to 2nd year until I was able to find friends that supported me and were able to help a lot with that. So it's a reality for a lot of queer people, and especially lesbians deal with it a lot with confet, which is basically feeling you have to be straight, you have to like men, and it leads you to believe you do. So you pick your crushes on boys in primary school, and when you're older, it might be that you've put yourself in a relationship with someone that you don't really like for the idea of fitting in. And I've never had to deal with that too badly, but it's definitely been the more internalized, not being able to accept yourself side of it that I've definitely suffered from a lot. But yeah, the support systems have helped though. It's getting better in Donegal, and I can tell.
That's good to hear. And I think kind of touching on what Megan said as well, is there isn't that quick fix, but creating those safe spaces is a good step in the direction of that support. Megan?
I think one thing I really struggled with coming to terms with when I started working with the Breakout group is how some young people have just accepted that they're going to be targets of homophobia and transphobia, and it's just their normal and it's their daily lives. I remember being with a young people out in a group. I just kind of started working here, and some young fellas started jeering at them, making fun of them, kind of the usual box standard homophobia. And I was furious. I was ready to go. We were in McDonald's and I was ready to go full Karen, get the manager, get the young lads seen to. And one of the young people kind of pulled me aside and said, "What's the big Sure, that happens every day. And I was so distraught, and I think that's just a really sobering reality, that for people that are maybe visibly, I suppose, read as being LGBTQ, that this is just their normal, that they wake up every day and accept this is going to happen. And I don't think I want to live in an Ireland where this is something that has to be accepted.
Thanks, Megan. Chaz, what are your thoughts?
Well, growing up, I never really realized it at the time, but I was sort of made fun of for acting gay, if you know what I mean. And, I don't really know. I kind of never really thought about it until maybe my first year of secondary school, when I finally considered it, and, when I finally came to terms that I was queer in some way. And, I was really happy to find out that I was. And, I sort of, at my school, it's very sort of, it's a very private school, and it wouldn't be a very accepting school if you were to be labeled as queer. So I was really happy though, and I didn't realize it at the time. So I sort of told all my friends that I was bi, and I was sort of oddly surprised at their negative reaction, and I was sort of outed, or not outed, I mean I was kind of outcasted, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
And that just simply saying, oh, I am queer, it sort of forced me to move to the new school that I'm in at the minute, which is, thankfully a bit better than my old school.
Okay. Do you know, the thing that I love that I heard there was that happiness that you found with kind of coming to your realisation of yourself. Like, that's wonderful to hear. And also that you had the ability to make a change, to move school. That's really good to hear.
I think growing up in Donegal, LGBTQ, the community, it's such a hushed subject, because all the older generations, they wouldn't talk about it much. And I'm not gonna lie, I didn't know about gay people until I was about 10 years old. I didn't know anything about it. But when I did realise, I kept it hushed as well, because I didn't know how to talk about it or how to tell other people. But it was then until I went to Breakout, I finally met people that were like me, and it just felt so relieving, because I finally had someone to talk to about all this stuff, and it was amazing.
That common ground between each other is really powerful, isn't
Yeah.
it? What you said there as well about kind of maybe different generations and different generations understanding and responses, that's kind of something else I wanted to have a little think about today. Have you kind of noticed any changes in society recently?
I think one of the major changes I've seen was like how Donegal has been having more pride recently, like pride events, because in 2022 we had our first pride event in Inishowen, and then we had our Letterkenny's first pride parade in 2023, and they've had it again this year. So I think they were kind of influenced. So Bruncrana started it all, but then Letterkenny came on next year, so it is helping. So they're kind of influencing each other.
That visibility, because
Yeah.
you were talking about things
And the
being hushed,
representation.
and that little bit of the visibility and representation.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a positive kind of change that you've noticed.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. Chaz, anything that you've maybe noticed?
Recently, I would say maybe, like what Tara said, people, like there's sort of more opportunities for gay people to, celebrate themselves, sort of. I don't really have much to add on to it, really, if I'm being honest.
Okay. That's all right, Chaz. That's all right. Thanks. Megan, what's your thoughts?
I'm going to be a wee bit more downcast here. I think it's lovely what Tara said. I definitely agree that the increased visibility is gorgeous to see. But I've kind of noticed, so I was 15 when we voted for marriage equality, and I think we kind of got caught up in that. We've done it, we've beaten homophobia, we're a progressive country, and we didn't really go beyond that. And while I feel gay rights and gay acceptance in Ireland has stayed pretty stagnant since then, it hasn't gotten hugely better, but it definitely hasn't gotten worse. I do think the opposite can be said for transgender rights and how transgender people are treated in Irish society. Maybe not just Irish society, it's more of a global phenomenon. You're seeing it in the States, you're seeing it in the UK, but I do think transphobia has gotten worse in the past 4 or 5 years. I don't know if we want to chalk it up to COVID and people maybe spending a wee bit too much time on the internet, but I do see this increase in kind of moral outrage about transgender people just existing. And I don't think we were this bad about it 10, 15 years ago. So I do think there have been some great changes, like Tara and Chaz both said, but I don't think we're fully there yet, especially for our transgender peers.
Thanks, Megan.
I agree with Megan, what Megan says, honestly, because transphobia is getting really bad, and we've seen it in even like Irish politics and stuff recently, coming over from the UK's beliefs as well, because the UK are slowly cracking down on like trans medical care and stuff. And I do like all the like pride events and stuff that have been happening, like Dublin Pride. When I went there, it was absolutely amazing. Like, I didn't realise there was such like a huge community of queer people in just Dublin alone. And then the first Letterkenny one was really exciting for me, and even though I think some people found it, like, especially my age, found it like cringy, I thought it was really great. It was pretty amazing. So I think there's like more of a conversation around like queer people existing, but there's less on like trying to get laws passed to help queer people. It's more just talking about it instead of doing something. But I do like the queer visibility recently, and it's gotten a lot better, I think. So.
But both you kind of touched on what you were saying earlier about there's definitely a distinction between kind of like the reality and the idea of that kind of kinship and that ally. What do you think?
I'm so ready to talk about this. Oh my god.
Pull up a seat.
I am fully ready to talk about this. So I completely agree with Megan. So although we've had so many positive changes, especially in law, there's been legalization of gay marriage, there's been lots of pride events, there's organizations like Breakout and DYS all over, like all in Donegal, to support gay people. And that is great to see. But to be the bringer of bad news, we are still so far away from full acceptance of queer people, and most people don't even realize it. For example, I know a lot of people who a few years ago, I remember in 2021, acceptance of queer people skyrocketed that year. I remember, especially in my year, girls were coming out left and right as bisexual, which was great. But then the next year, it took a massive fall, and in these last few years, it's just been getting worse. And what I've been seeing a lot of is a lot of internalized homophobia. To remind just what internalized homophobia is, Axe already explained, but it's basically when a person is accepting of other gay people, but can't accept the fact that they are queer themselves. I see it in, honestly, I see it in so many people every single day. The fact that they just can't come to terms with the fact that they are queer. And it's so incredibly heartbreaking to see, because nobody really talks about the fact that it's so lovely when people come out, because that gives so much representation. It makes other queer people feel more safe to come out. But now that there's been a rise in internalized homophobia, a lot more people have been more hush-hush about it, about being queer. And then these same people who have internalized homophobia, whenever they're asked about queer rights and how do they feel, like recently has there been much homophobia, they always say no. Because they've been hush-hush about their sexuality, which there's not much wrong with. Because they've been so hush-hush about their sexuality, they haven't been noticing how bad homophobia has gotten. Because although we have marriage and we have legal gay marriage and we have rights, we are still so far from queer acceptance, especially with the rise of internalized homophobia that I've seen everywhere. I see it so often, every single day.
Thanks so much.
It's so interesting listening to the young people and their experiences, and I find it really sad, to be honest. I find it heartbreaking that this is where we are now in 2024. I'm coming from a different, well, not a different perspective, but I've lived longer. I'm nearly 46. So I've seen so many changes throughout my lifetime in terms of LGBT acceptance, homophobia, transphobia. But I have to say, I have never seen it change so quickly in a negative way than I have done in the last couple of years. So if you look at it, and I'll do a really quick kind of synopsis in my lifetime. When I was a teenager, and I grew up in Donegal, you wouldn't dare come out in secondary school. I didn't even know that there was such thing,
was a thing
that you could be gay.
Yeah.
Like I didn't really know that, right? So you wouldn't have came out because it would have been just not good for you in terms of people's negativity towards you. And then something happened. People started to talk about it. It became more visible throughout, and into the noughties. Breakout started in 2009. There was more funding put in place in terms of mental health for LGBT young people, to provide supports for LGBT young people. And then what really, the rainbow time as I call it, 2013, 14, 15, 16, maybe into 17. It was just amazing. And the young people talked about it there, about marriage equality.
Yes.
And they were really young and maybe probably don't really remember. I know Megan does. But it was magic. It was magic. And now what has happened, I suppose I have an idea of what happened. I suppose the political changes throughout the world.
Absolutely.
And it has impacted so greatly. And I knew it would then, but I didn't think it would impact so much.
And here.
In beautiful wee Ireland.
Yeah.
We're a kind nation, Laura. Like we're good people. And what I have seen, and like I haven't done LGBT work in 6 years, but I took on this piece of work for Donegal Youth Service. We got funded from the Donegal County Council and around LGBT awareness and, providing LGBT education sessions and building the capacity of Breakout and LGBT groups in the county. But I couldn't get over how much the landscape has changed. It is shocking. Like if you're talking about that rainbow time, you wouldn't have seen somebody saying something online. They wouldn't have been brave enough to say something homophobic or transphobic online because they would have been shot down straight away. Now it has flipped.
Absolutely.
And it's shocking. And every time I see it, and now people that would have supported marriage equality, like really 100% supported marriage equality, and I see them online and I just be like, what are you doing? Like young people are looking at this is not okay. Like if you look at the school climate survey that Belong To did in 2024, 76% of LGBT young people felt unsafe in our schools.
That's awful.
76%, that's shocking. And 86% felt isolated by other school students. And you know what the cracker is, the one that just really shocked me? 58% of young people, LGBT young people in Irish schools, Donegal schools, across the board, heard homophobic comments. 58% heard homophobic comments from their teachers. From their teachers. That just blows my mind.
Absolutely.
And what have we become as a nation that's okay? This is our young people. This is our future. Like it's so not okay.
And do you think that some of that is stemming from a lack of training perhaps? Or is it the climate?
Yeah, I really do feel it's the climate. Because we are well, I suppose I think it's a two-pronged approach. Education is key to everything, but at the same time, I think anything right now that's others, anybody that's another, is targeted. So you're not safe. And like, I never thought, like, I have an adult child, but I have small children as well that are 5. I never thought that I would get my child that's 26 and be fearing. Like, I am in fear for my 5-year-old twins to now go through the school system because of the makeup of our family. That is shocking.
And the attitudes that people are holding, that
Yeah.
fear of the other.
Yeah, it's just so sad. And like, the young people and listening to what they're saying, you know, it's basically that they accept that that's just the way it is. And that shouldn't be.
And I suppose you've had the experience that it isn't like that, like you said, at that period of time, those few years. So you know that it is possible, which surely makes it more painful.
Yeah, to see how quick it had changed. So like, I've seen young people, you know, their experience in schools, not perfect, don't get me wrong, but in that time,
It improved.
yeah, my child was at school in that time, and it massively improved. It wasn't perfect, but it certainly wasn't what it is today.
Is it okay if I say something about
Of
my last
course,
point?
yeah.
So when you were just talking about the Pride events, it reminded me a bit of a more negative note. But I noticed a lot of these Pride events in Donegal, they've been labelled as, you know, maybe family fun days. They've become a very, like, they kind of forget about the whole LGBT thing and think of it as a family fun, colourful day. Whereas I think it's important to still remember, because I only reminded myself of that when we were in Dublin Pride, and you know, I just got caught up in everything until on stage there was someone speaking about the seriousness of all of it. Like, sometimes we forget what we're actually here for, because we have so much, like, we're proud of our history, and a lot of our history is so tragic, and we still need to remember that to this day and not just let it be a capitalised thing, because
Yeah.
sorry, I don't know what else to say.
I hear you, and that's such a valid point as well. Okay, guys, any final thoughts or words?
To be honest, I think generally, although we've come very far in gay rights, I think what's most important is educating other people, because as I think we've all said, people are not as educated as they think about the LGBTQIA plus community. And I think what's really important is making sure that everyone is educated and knows about these things, so that they can be a good ally, or if they're queer, they can safely come out and be themselves.
Thank you. Megan, where would you recommend for people, just as a starting point, if they're listening today and thinking, okay, well, where do I look? Where do I look for some more information? Where would you recommend?
So there's a lot of really great resources online if you do want to educate yourself about the LGBTQ community. Belong to, who are the national youth organisation here in Ireland. They have so many different resources, some of it quite detailed. We don't expect anyone to read a lot of essays, but there's a lot of really quick, snappy terminology guidelines they have in place that are very easily accessed. If you just look up LGBT terminology belong to, you'll find all the information you need. Breakout is also here. We have a Facebook page where you can contact us, Breakout Donegal. Any questions you have, we don't only work with LGBT people, we're more than happy to work with their friends, their family, their allies, maybe those who aren't quite at the stage yet where they can call themselves an ally but want to get to that stage. We will be so happy to work with you and help you get to where you want to be.
Okay, on that note, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for your voices, for your thoughts, and for your opinions.